Today's conversation with Ikram Guerd from Aspivix, who's making a new way, as I say, they're reimagining gynecology with gentle in mind. That's literally what they say on their website. I mean, this is one of those things that I think you can see immediately as a practitioner will have an impact on your care delivery.
Without question. Look, there is such a big push, and there should be and should have been all along to try to really mitigate discomfort and keep the patient's level of anxiety about procedures at a minimum. And if there's anything further that we can do to minimize discomfort and be compassionate about discomfort that's involved in a lot of gynecologic procedures, then power to it. So I was very, very excited to learn that this new instrument has come about. I have to be honest, the tenaculum, which is what is being reimagined here, literally looks like a barbaric instrument from the distant past. And from what I understand, it used to be used to remove bullets from people on the battlefield. So you can only imagine what this looks like.
So, I mean, just the visual, as well as the actual pain. I mean, I can only imagine what the people who come into your office and already have some anxiety from whatever it is, the procedure you're going to do, that just adds to the fear and the discomfort, and makes, quite honestly, your job harder as a deliverer of care.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it has served us well for many years, but why not invent a better mousetrap, right?
Well, we can't wait for you to hear more about this. And we're sure our listeners, both the care deliverers and the patients, will be literally running to figure out how they can be in an office or be a part of a practice where this device is used, because it sounds like it's a real game changer.
Agree. Let's talk to Ikram.
Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun Scherl. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We are so excited to have our guest today, Ikram Guerd, VP of Global Marketing and the Managing Director for the US of Aspivix, which is a company that is taking a whole new approach, and hard to believe that changes haven't been made in this area for as long as we can remember. Welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel and Alyssa, for having me. I'm super excited to see you today and have this conversation.
So tell us about Aspivix, the problem you've been solving, and how many decades it's been since anyone has taken a look at this.
That's a great question. Let me take a step back, maybe just so you can understand where we come from and what Aspivix means. So the story started in 2015. Two co-founders, so we have three co-founders. Two co-founders, one is obgyn in Geneva, in Switzerland. His dad is an obgyn as well, so that has been running into the family for quite some time. And one day he was talking with his brother, Julien, who is the second co-founder, who is an engineer. And they were talking about things that they can improve in gynecology. And the tenaculum came into the discussion. Basically, David, the obgyn, was just sharing how this procedure, like inserting an IUD, is very common, but we are still using instruments that are causing so much pain and bleeding that are totally unnecessary. So that's the story point. And basically, they started developing different type of prototype. It's like suction could work. Like we still need to grasp the cervix, but we can do it in a more gentle way, a more respectful way, without causing pain. And that's how they developed the Carevix, which is the name of the product that we have now in the market, which is based on suction. So instead of pinching, you all know the tenaculum, how it looks like. This is this awful instrument.
Yeah, it is truly barbaric. I every time I have placed one, I say to myself, Oh my God, an atraumatic placement. Thank goodness, because it really is a brutal looking instrument.
Exactly. Thank you, Alyssa,
Yeah.
for confirming. And
Yeah.
even if they are trying to make it more like cute, pink, it's still painful. So there's different version in the market, but it's still a tenaculum. And what we have developed is basically a more like my happy face type of shape. So when you take a look at the suction head, that's what you place onto the cervix. So round shaped, less traumatic, and basically you just place it onto the cervix, you push the button, and then you'll suck a little bit of the tissue, just enough to be able to pull, get the cervix, and then get the uterus aligned to be able to insert the IUD or do other procedures. So that's
Can we just talk a little bit about why this is such a better mousetrap? So, what a tenaculum is really doing is gripping the cervix in an effort to be able to have traction to put something in the uterus while being able to straighten the uterine canal. This really lessens the chance of an IUD or an instrument, whatever that instrument might be, going in the uterus and perforating through the uterus. But we do need to have a good deal of traction to do this. Tell me about this suction. How well does it hold? Can we feel confident that we're going to get the same type of result as we do with a tenaculum, which of course is not ideal?
Yes, and thank you for going through the steps. And to answer your question, that's really what was our key points. How do we still have the same type of pulling strength without hurting? So we can pull a force in terms of kilogram, which is equivalent to 1 kilogram. So you can pull quite a lot. You don't have, at the end of the day, you don't have to pull that strongly to be able to get the cervix and the uterus aligned. We had a randomized control trial with result that has been published, and it shows, like in terms of user experience, that they were able to do the same procedure without the tenaculum on patients, and the experience is way better. So that's really where our technology is focused, is delivering a patient-centric experience with the same type of pulling strength without pinching and generating pain and bleeding.
So 2 questions. You talked about it's a better patient experience. I'd like to understand a little bit more about that. Is it faster? How are they measuring the degree of pain? I'd love to understand, patient A who's getting an IUD inserted the old-fashioned way, and patient B who's lucky enough to have a physician who knows how to use this.
Yes, great question. So basically, the way we use it, and in terms of patient experience, what we have seen is it significantly reduced pain and bleeding, and the patient experience is way better. We have an ambassador program right now that is running. We have 16 sites, and those sites are centers of excellence worldwide. We have this site in Sweden. They had 72 women who have been who benefited from the Carevix, and the entire team were all midwives. So it was also very interesting to see, because there's different users who can place the IUD. Could be midwives, obgyn. In that case, they were all midwives. They had 99% patient satisfaction and 93% of success rate. So and they really adopted very quickly. For the patient, they will feel probably just a little bit of suction, sometimes not. But it's like, and especially it was interesting to see women who had the first experience getting an IUD with the tenaculum a couple of years ago, and then others, and totally different experience with the Carevix.
I'm curious what measures specifically you use to define better patient satisfaction.
So we had our visual analog score, and then we were able to really measure from how was the pain, and how was also the bleeding is, you can see it, but the pain was measured that way.
So my question is this, and I think this is ingenious. I would love to try it, because I would like to understand how strong this hold is compared to the traditional device. But the good news is there aren't those sharp points that could lacerate the cervix, which of course is not desirable. But part of the pain of an IUD or hysteroscope or instrument insertion has to do with dilation or stretching the cervix a little bit, and placing something into the cavity of the uterus where normally it's somewhat of a collapsed space. So how is that pain managed during the randomized trial, but also, measured in terms of the VAF score in the study?
Yeah, we had the 7 points where we were measuring the pain, the perception of pain, like from the moment we insert the speculum right to the end of the procedure. So we were measuring the pain, and you can see like the level of anxiety probably also increased the pain. But you can see that when the tenaculum was used on the other arm, the pain was way higher. And that's where we were able to really reduce. When you take a look, there's different sources of pain, and that pain can be created with different, like the speculum can be very uncomfortable, and some women can feel certain type of pain. Then there's the placement of the IUD can also generate pain, how it's placed, where it's placed. So that's what we are really tackling is one big portion of that pain, which is the use of the tenaculum.
Should I also assume that this is a disposable instrument, so there's a separate one for any patient?
Yes, exactly. So it comes sterilized in a sterile pouch, and this is a single use for now. We have been asking, so in our voice of customer very early on, we ask what type of instrument would you like, something reusable or single use? The majority of our customers were asking something single use because they didn't want to bother with sterilization, like for the tenaculum, because it had time, cost, resources, and all of that. That's what we have in the market. We will come up later with a reusable version as well.
I have two other questions, and we're chomping at the bit here to find out information regarding this. In terms of disposable, and you mentioned cost, I mean, this usually seems to be the limiting parameter for a lot of large practices, especially to adopt something of this nature. Is this reasonably cost efficient when compared to an instrument that we can reuse over and over and over again, even though it has to be sterilized?
Yes. So what we are finalizing right now is in terms of pricing. So we've asked also women across different states in the US and healthcare providers, the willingness to pay, how this pricing should look like. So that's something we are finalizing to make sure that, and that's also, we are very focused on collecting data. That way we can also have a discussion with payers and being able to have that price reimbursed in some points.
Excellent. And in regard to the approval process, is this now approved in the US or is it approved in Europe only?
So the product is FDA cleared, so it's approved in the US. It has also received CE mark, so we can also start selling it in Europe. We have started the commercialization in Switzerland beginning of this year, and we have a partnership with Bayer Healthcare for distribution. So we started with co-promotion, and we have an agreement for distribution in Switzerland. So that serves as a test where we will be expanding that to other countries in Europe, and then US will see later how that will look like. But we are learning a lot from the experience in Europe that we can definitely.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's incredibly convenient that Bayer makes some really amazing IUDs as well.
True. That's true. That's true. So the goal is it's perfect alignment in terms of positioning and giving a better experience for women. So yeah, we're very excited about that.
Here's today's hot flash. 90% of women seeing the gynecologist report mild to severe pain during procedures where a cervical tenaculum is used.
I'm just curious, you talk a lot about the voice of the customer, but also the voice of the physician, I'm sure, has been very important. In some of your work, it says that 18% of women avoid an IUD as a birth control method for fear of pain. I'm curious, Alyssa, in a practice setting, does that seem right? It seems almost like it's low because the thought of having something sharp and pointy and that looks like that, would give many, many people pause when they're in your office.
No question. But, thankfully, the tenaculum has not really been shown that commonly as part of the IUD insertion or, experience or hysteroscopic experience. But now that there is just so much drama being shown on TikTok and other social media about how uncomfortable IUD insertions are, I think it's coming to the forefront of people's minds. I want to be honest. I am super excited to hopefully use this in my practice because I do use many, many IUDs. But I have to say that in the right hands with a physician or healthcare provider who is super experienced and has a very high volume of placing IUDs, you know, we do have our own ways of helping to control pain. For example, I will usually have somebody take an analgesic that's over the counter 20 minutes prior to procedure. I often also help them through relaxation exercises before starting any procedure. I use a numbing gel in people who aren't sensitive to that, so even for as little as just the speculum insertion, and then very liberally in the vagina and on the cervix. I also at times can use an injectable anesthetic, which of course is not ideal, but it's available. So I do think there is an art to this, but your device surely would help. How does this device account for all the different shapes and sizes of cervixes out there? Or should I say cervices out there? Because, you know, especially after childbirth or, you know, any sort of congenital anomalies, a lot of these cervixes can look different. How does the device account for that?
Yes, that's a great question. And just I just want to add a comment back to what you were just saying prior. I wish I had an OB-GYN like you, because like you
Thank
I
you.
always say that. Ikram, I always say that when I hear Alyssa, how she speaks about procedures and how I know she speaks to her patients.
Exactly, exactly. So thank you for taking care of women and really giving a better experience.
Thank you.
And I will just add to your question, Rachel. I would say almost 100% of the cases, the tenaculum is not part of the discussion with the patient. Like, you never show the tenaculum. You will explain how the procedure will go. We will be using the speculum, and then you go step by step. But then the step where they were supposed to like maybe show the tenaculum, like they were just think you will feel probably a pinch. And then what happens is, like, as a woman, as a patient, you will just feel like some women will feel okay with the pain. Some others will have extreme pain, like one of the worst. And we are all different in terms of pain. And what happens is, like, you just feel like, oh, is there something wrong with me? You just also feel betrayed in some cases by your doctor. So that's also what we are, and that just increased the level of anxiety and the pain perception for the rest of the procedure. Every day.
And to that matter, it really affects the way you approach your next gynecologic visit and your next gynecologic visit. So this is really, unfortunately, the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to anxiety for exams. Exactly. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No, that's I 100% agree. And that creates trauma. I had a discussion with one of our very, very first patients. She reached out to me out of nowhere, and she was so sweet and so touching because she just wanted to share her story. She had an awful experience getting an IUD back then, 7 years ago, and she was like, she was dismissed. She had like the worst pain. I was like, this is 2024, like this must be something out there. So she did some research. She tried the birth control pill, it didn't work for her, so she had to go back to the IUD. And basically, she reached out, like, do you have a site where I can benefit from it? So she went to Columbia University, which is one of our very first sites using it in New York. And she had an awesome experience. And she was like just tearing, like just crying. And I was crying with her because the story was so touching. And that woman could have just said, I'm done with IUD. So when you were talking about the 18%, it's even more than that. Like, we have different numbers. 18% is more like on the low side. 30% is more like on the high hand. Women are just getting afraid of getting an IUD because of pain they have experienced or stories they have seen on TikTok. You probably know at least one woman who had a bad experience. So now with the device, it can be part of the discussion. So you can show it, and that's what they're doing. So the other side that is currently using it is IU Health in Indianapolis. So they are doing a study. And basically, they include the Carevix into the discussion. So they explain how the procedure will go, they show the device, and 100% of the patient just felt reassured when they saw the device. And that makes also the experience a better one.
Yeah. Going back to anatomy, any people who cannot be candidates for the device, again, based on shapes of their cervix?
So the shape is has been developed to be able to serve as many women as possible. But then you have a very the suction head that is available in the market right now. You basically need to use it for cervixes with a diameter of 26 millimeters and above. For small cervixes, that's probably 10% of the population. We are right now working on being able to offer a smaller size. You can still try it. The only thing that could happen, it won't hurt. It will probably just suck air.
Pop off.
And it will pop off. So, but we are working on that to be able to.
I specifically, of course, we always think about patients that have affected our psyches over the years. So, those patients who may have had surgery on their cervixes, like a LEEP procedure or cone biopsy, where their cervixes are really small or flat and flush against the vaginal wall. And I could see that being a little challenging for this. It's not that easy with a tenaculum either, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Ikram, you're part of a company and working with physicians who have always cared about the patient and were always concerned about the pain. And I remember hearing a story years ago when I first was getting into the business side of women's health, that a professor at a medical school was teaching a classroom of medical students and said, it doesn't hurt for the patient when you insert an IUD. And one of the students in the class raised her hand in this case and says, "How do you know?" And the doctor said, "No one ever complained." And that just to me is emblematic of some of the challenges that we're hearing all the time about women feeling, in this case, not even asked, forget about listened to. So I would love to have Dr. Dweck explain what has now changed. And now people finally have believed women, and there are new regulations around the management of pain with IUD insertion. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, there is no shame in having pain or discomfort when your insides are literally being manipulated. But on the other hand, I think that providers oftentimes can't read people's minds. So there needs to be a very direct conversation. Everybody has a different pain tolerance, as you've mentioned. Ikram. So, some people literally come in, get their IUD, 2 seconds in, they're out of the office, back to work, but that's not the usual. Most people do have some discomfort, and I think measures have to be taken to account for that. This is one amazing step that I have a feeling will evolve even more over time to really help with pain. And look, this isn't just about IUD insertion, as so many medical procedures move towards in-office use. For example, in-office hysteroscopy, where we use a little teeny telescope to look inside the uterus, which traditionally we would take people into the operating room to have general anesthesia to do. I could imagine now with a device such as this would be more amenable to in-office with minimal pain. Bottom line is pain is a real thing, and it's absolutely appropriate to address it and beforehand.
100% agree. I like it.
For people who are listening, whether they're practitioners or potential patients or people who have already had an experience with an IUD and swore never again, where and when can they find this product? You talked about launching in Europe. When can patients go into their physician's offices and have an IUD inserted with the Carevix? How long do they have to wait?
Hopefully before the end of this year. So we have new partners that will be starting in September. So I'm very excited. So we are discussing with a network of clinics that are across the US, and they are in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. So then we will be able to offer it more broadly to patients. And as we go, we will be make it available broadly to all women in the US. So that's the ultimate goal. But if any provider is interested to use it and try it, they can reach out to us anytime. We can definitely have a discussion.
Yeah, great. Do you have a cost for this device, or is it something that gets negotiated based on bulk and who's interested in purchasing?
Yes, so that's exactly what we are finalizing. So we have different customers, like very large hospital and
Yeah.
private clinics. So we are also trying to see what will be the cost. Some of them will be absorbing the cost. Some others will be charging an out-of-pocket for patient. But that's what we are finalizing. So I hope
Right.
that
I
will be
mean, I mainly ask because I have some patients who will actually decide upon, long acting reversible contraception, LARC, including an IUD, based on the cost of the actual IUD and what their insurance might cover. So I'm guessing that this will be part of that same conversation.
Yes, exactly. And then you have centers like Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So that's also another type of customers where we are like looking at ways to make this device accessible and available as well, because they have a lot of IUD placement.
Yeah. Two other questions, and I'm sorry, they just keep rolling into my head.
No, don't be
Number
sorry.
one, the big push now is to consider long-acting reversible contraception immediately postpartum. Is this a device that could be used on an immediately postpartum cervix, or because, again, going to the shape and anatomy of a postpartum cervix?
Yes. Yes, we haven't had any specific data on that, but I don't see why it couldn't be used. So we can
Okay.
definitely try it.
Yeah,
The
surely.
yeah.
That's larger than 26 millimeters, so I'm
Exactly.
guessing it would be appropriate. Mhm.
Exactly. And then you can really place it the way you want, or the way it works better. So usually what we have seen, it works better with like when you place it at 3 or 9 o'clock. It depends on the shape of the cervix as well. It basically needs to be as dry as possible, in good condition in some ways, and that's pretty much it. So I don't see
Right.
why it shouldn't work.
And did your studies address perforation rate as compared to with tenaculum, or that wasn't really an endpoint?
No, no.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we can maybe look at
Alyssa, explain
other
what
stuff.
that is so people even understand the question.
Of course. So a very rare but potential complication of insertion of an IUD could be something called a uterine perforation, where the IUD actually is placed through the uterine wall rather than just into the uterine cavity. And of course, this is not a desired outcome. So I just wondered if there was any difference with tenaculum versus Carevix, and I'm assuming it will be about the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
And
this is so
we-
exciting. And this Carevix is one of the reasons I think Alyssa and I have always remained so excited about this podcast and having these conversations. I mean, this really could change an experience for women, or give people an option to try something that they've previously potentially been scared to do because of the pain. So thank you
Exactly.
so much for
Mhm.
this amazing breakthrough, and to the team that has created it, who really were just focused on giving the patient a better experience. Because one of the things we didn't discuss, it is at least as I understand it as a layperson, is regardless of the speculum you use, it doesn't have any impact on the efficacy of the IUD. So this is really about improving the experience for a patient and enabling a physician to deliver care in a more comfortable way.
Exactly.
Well, and in a more compassionate way, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, we don't need any more TikTok horror stories. So,
So for
Yes,
people who want to know if Carevix is coming to a doctor near them soon, where can they find more information?
The best way is so they can reach out to me or any team members, or they can, like, we have content all the time in our LinkedIn profile and our website. So usually that next week we have the approval in the UK markets. So we're very excited about that. We have all of our new users that we spotlight as well. So they can follow us in any of our channel, or they can reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to answer. And one thing I
fantastic.
forgot to mention, we talked a lot about IUD, but this device is also used in other transcervical procedures. And Alyssa, you can definitely confirm that there's other procedures where the tenaculum is used, like endometrial sampling, endocervical biopsies, and others, even in IVF fertility treatments.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Many times those procedures are being done in an operating room, so patient discomfort isn't as concerning because many of them are under anesthesia, but absolutely the atraumatic nature of it is a very desirable characteristic.
And hysteroscopy, I think you were mentioning about hysteroscopy.
Yes,
more in the
hysteroscopy. Hysteroscopy simply being looking into the uterus with a little telescope, but it does have to go through the cervix to do so.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Ikram. We can't wait to have this broadly available on the marketplace. And I bet one of the best parts of your job is reading the testimonials and listening to patients and consumers who really are so very thankful for what you've created.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll send you one, Alyssa, so then you can attest it.
Please.
And
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
Thank you both of you for your great work and for spotlighting great innovation entrepreneurs and really making an impact in women's health.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.